start, Jignesh.
Yeah. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Euro Capital Q1 FY22 earnings call and presentation. We have along with us Mr. Sachin, who is Executive Chairman and Managing Director, and we also have Mr. Neerav Shah, who is a Chief Strategy Officer and Head of Investor Relations. So, Mr. Nath, over to you, sir. If you can start with a brief details about the results, and then probably we can take up question and answer.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jignesh. Thanks for hosting us. It's a very momentous day for us because since yesterday, for the first time, we got listed on National Stock Exchange. I'm very pleased to see both trading code of NSE plus BSE on this screen. I'm also pleased that along with we also have Mr. Anuj Pandey, our Chief Risk Officer, Mr. Amit, our Chief Treasury Officer, and Mr. Sandeep Zanwar, Chief Finance Officer. So let me start. I think the people are still joining. Let me start with some brief of for those who are not familiar with Ugro, given our young vintage as a company. Let me give a little bit of background. So this is who we are and where we stand. Some of the number reflected here is as of July. We normally like to update our investor fraternity of the current state, given the market is very volatile. 2 months back results is important, but some portion of how the month have been also is included. Ugro today have a 955 crore of net worth, 1,561 crore of total asset under management as of July, total cumulative disbursement of 3,100 crore, serving more than 8,200 plus customers. In last 2 years, we have increased our lending partnership. We have 32 plus lenders, and as of March, total gross debt of 816 crore. We are soon touching to be roughly around 400 plus employees. Our business continues to be very overweighted to the secured businesses. And we are expanding our physical footprint simultaneously to our digital footprint. And we have now 34 plus locations. More locations are being added. And our portfolio performance have remained healthy and steady over this period of pandemic, wherein gross NPA being 2.3% and net NPA being 1.9%. In addition to where we stand today, I think so for some of the people who are not familiar with Ugro, Ugro is re-christianed or reinvigorated form of a listed company called Jukhani Securities, which has been in existence since 1992. Largely, it was an investment company with a very small capital base. At the mid of 2018, which is July 2018, I acquired control of Jukhani Securities and all of this capital from institutional investors. We went live on 14th of January 2019. Between January to March, we built a small pilot book of around 40 odd crores. And our full live year was April financial year 19-20, wherein we operated for 11.5 months, built 850 crore of AUM. In 2021, we were functional only for 5 months because it was pandemic year. Still, we were able to grow our book to roughly around 1,350 odd crores. Both April and May was again shut down. We came back and restarted the business mid-June. June, we did a gross disbursement of roughly around 136 crore. July, we did roughly around 206 crore. So you would see that we have, in the first year to second year, we doubled our AUM, and now the balance sheet is expanding. Simultaneous to our entire liability side, and our credit engine and distribution engine is also now ramping up. I think so. For in the month of July, we went live with India's first and the largest co-lending partnership with Bank, wherein we started disbursing and receiving money on that. This is just give you a quick summary of what I talked about. The same numbers which we spoke is reflected over here, so I will not repeat. This will give you in terms of how balance sheet have been expanding. So as I said, that if you look at July 20, which is just post-pandemic 1 to July 21, you will see the disbursement have been growing very strictly. And July was, though it was not a full operational month as much as we wanted, but this was the largest month in terms of our total disbursement. In terms of this is the way our AUM is building it up. So I think so we are coming out of our build period and now we are in the growth cycle while the build is continuing to happen. And that's why our asset under management is also now growing sequentially month on month. I'll do a quick overview of people who are not very familiar with UGRO. UGRO is being built on 5 pillars. Very strong corporate governance, very strong management team, very large institutional capital, and a business which is a combination of tech knowledge. That's why we are, we characterize ourselves not truly a fintech, but though we are fintech in many respects, but it's a knowledge plus technology business. One other thing which, given that we have just got listed on National Stock Exchange, reason why we built this business in a listed company format was twofold objective. What we have seen as founders of this business, that majority of the new creation of lending institution or fintech businesses are all done in private domain. By the time these businesses mature and when they come to the market, the of those businesses are already peaks up, and majority of the public market investors get opportunity to participate when the business is already very matured and valuations are peaking it up. We wanted to create a business for perpetuity. That's why we felt that if we build in a listed company format, the business would there forever. Our existing investors would continue to get their exit from the public market, but also it gives an opportunity for large public market shareholder to participate in the journey of the growth rather than participating at the peak of the growth itself. So that's philosophically why we did it. Quickly, this business is dedicated to the small business financing in India. We say it's a $600 billion of under-penetrated opportunity, and we want to solve for the problem in some form. And our model of business is divided, as I said, in 2 parts. So at the center of it, it's our knowledge, which is our deep sectoral specialization driven by a deep data and technology platform. The asset side engine is divided in 4 parts. We are expanding our branch network, which is divided in tier 1 branches, which is serving prime customer, and tier 2 branches, which serves our micro customer. We have an ecosystem channel, which take care of the supply chain and the machinery financing business. And we have a large partnership and alliances channel where in our cost of capital advantage, we are disseminating through multiple partners. These partners can be fintech, payment platform, NBFCs, so on and so forth. And we have a digital direct channel, which is fully piloted. As soon as the full pandemic recedes, we will start that. On the liability side, we are both a traditional balance sheet led plus a fee-based platform. You'll see at the end of this presentation, we have said that our balance sheet not beyond 3.5 times. So we have a traditional balance sheet approach. The co-origination is deep focus for us. We are, as a young company, we are very fortunate to have 2 of the largest public sector institutions now partnering with us on the co-origination. Most of our asset origination are impact and priority sector related. That's why we are creating a specialized program for the global DFIs. And we are also simultaneously flipping our asset. We have publicly said that our intention is to take 1% market share and build 20,000 crore of business. Of that 20,000 crore of asset under management by 2025, 70% of that in the asset side would come from our branch-led channel, 20% would come from our ecosystem, 10% would come from our partnership and alliances, and balance would from our digital. In terms of the liability side balance sheet, 50% would be on balance sheet, around 30% would be in co-origination, balance would be in terms of securitization of asset. And that's why with low leverage, we are targeting to generate high ROE and ROA. So the way you should look at it is a combination of a tech fee originated platform plus balance sheet led platform. In terms of our governance, this is a unique company where we believe that most of the failures in India for financial services is the failures of governance. From day one, we have created an governance framework wherein in our articles it is provided that the majority of our board is independent director. Any shareholder which is more than 10% of the company has a board seat. All of the rights in the framework, we cannot lend more than 1% of our net worth. All the framework of how the company would function is provided in our articles. And that's why for a young company like us, we have a board of 13. Our board members come from background, they are domain specialists from regulatory background, public sector, private sector, so on and so forth. In terms of the management, our management team, we have very heavily invested in our management team layers, our first layer, second layer, and third layer. So we have not waited for the size of the business to get created before we create the entire people infrastructure. And we have a large pool of equity option, which drives our people to stay and be participant in the value creation. So that is the way we are augmenting our management team on an ongoing basis. As I said that, Ugrow is one of those companies which at a very early stage did India's largest institutional capital raise, which 4 of the private equity public market investors through QIP and preferential allotment had participated. In terms of, where we stand, so we say that small business financing in India is divided in 2 parts. On one side of the spectrum, you have specialized NBFC, which are divided in sector, product, and geographies. Most successful ones are those who focus on geographies. And the other side of the spectrum, which are largely fintech players who focus on asset side spectrum. They can be P2P player, digital lender, and supply chain platform. And we are at the intersection of both. So on one side, we are deeply specialized by sector, but other side, we are deeply, tech-oriented as a lending institution. Within our specialization, we have looked in India, the entire 180 sector spectrum. We have filtered 20, and we operate in these 8 broad sector and micro enterprises as an additional sector, wherein we are sector neutral. Within those 8 sector, we operate within 70 to 100 subsector. So that's our deep specialization, which we are building over a period of time. And our sector specialization is driven by deep data analytics driven underwriting with physical touch. Our underwriting is divided in 2 parts. All of our underwriting is built on 3 core pillars of GST, banking plus bureau. And that's why we have a score, which is called Grow Score 2. It was a Grow Score 1. Post-pandemic, we have refreshed it and we combined the machine learning banking module along with the bureau data. This score has categorized customer from A to E, wherein you can filter bottom of 20% customer, which contributes mostly 80% of the loss ratios. And that gives us ability to turn around every login into our system at a very effective rate. And that is supplemented by physical underwriting, which is driven by a template, wherein we have researched almost 100 subsectors, and we have created an underwriting scorecard for our underwriters to take. So when they visit, they know what exactly they have to review and take data and make a automated judgment on the platform. And as I said, that we among those very strong players who believe that MSME financing in India in next 4 to 5 years would reach the level of consumer financing, so it will become on tap. The combination of GST, banking, and bureau gives you a ability to virtually profile the customer and come to the eligibility very, very quickly. And we are constantly working on that. We have invested very significant amount of both cash, capital plus people infrastructure around this. Our technology is driven by 4 core platforms, which supports our channel. All of our platform are digitally integrated. We use roughly around 40 plus APIs. We fetch data, log into in principle approval we do without physical intervention in 60 minutes. And our distribution network, as I explained earlier, is divided in these 4 parts. Our tier 1 branches services the prime customer. With the definition of prime customer, the customers who have ability to borrow between 8% interest rate to say 12 or 13% interest rate. And our micro branches are serving the micro customer, which are sub 25 lakh rupees of loan. We are expanding our micro network very, very on a consistent basis. We piloted first 25 locations in last quarter of previous financial year. And now we are expanding, adding 50 more net branches to ourselves. And we have said publicly that our goal is to reach to 275 locations in the next few years. Ugrow today is the only company which in terms of its branch product architecture has the ability to serve the primemost customer to the micro customer. So we have 4 products. Pratham, which is targeted to a CMR 1 to 5 customer at a price band of below 10%. And this is a program which we are doing along with Bank of Baroda. So this gives us the ability to even compete with the largest or the most primemost lender, which is technically a bank customer. Sanjeevani is a product which is same prime customer when the eligibility cannot be created just out of the system. So there is an underwriting intervention is required. Sathi is again a prime customer whose collateral is not prime. He has collateral, but it is not prime. It's not a self-occupied residential property. But otherwise, his cash flow can be analyzed on the same basis through banking plus GST. And micro is a customer which is largely secured, but it is real small business. It can be a shop, kirana store, tailoring, anything which you can think of in a micro sector. So that's why we in terms of our product architecture, it's a large framework which we are creating. Second, in our ecosystem, majority of India's financing for moving to cash flow based financing, and all of the cash flow based financing is getting trapped through supply chain financing. We are building large products around our supply chain financing platform. It is a completely digital technology driven platform. We do anchor-led financing, non-anchor-led financing. We do vendor, distributor, dealer. We do sales invoice discounting, purchase invoice discounting. We are the first lender on GeM platform. We actually created the GeM Sahay platform along with the iSpirit. We have handed it over to the government. The entire GeM Sahay is actually hosted on UCloud. So even the largest lender in the country goes through our cloud. So that's our ecosystem. These are the number of anchors which we have. And second part of our ecosystem, why we call it ecosystem? Because at the center of it, you have either an anchor or an OEM provider. So we have now integrated ourselves with 152 plus OEMs, wherein at the point of sale or a point of origination of a machinery, we do financing. And that's also in India, actually, there are very few lenders who do machinery financing. Our view is that financing against a collateral like a property versus machinery is far more superior because it's a productive asset financing. When you finance a machinery, it straight away adds to the revenue of the customer. And that's why we are expanding this also as a channel. And third, our channel, what we call our partnership and alliances, we believe that given our cost of capital, which is far superior within the peer set, we have an ability to partner with multiple other financial institutions, marketplace, and transaction aggregators who have ability to originate customer and reach to the bottom of the pyramid, and we can provide source of capital. So we do co-lending with the players which are listed here. But broadly, the strategy is to look at online aggregator, e-commerce marketplace, POS payment providers, neobank, NBFCs, who have either a transaction data source or a customer origination capacity. And through our data analytics platform, we automate credit. And most of these programs are supported by these originators in some form of a credit cover. And that's the way we are expanding this as a channel. And digital, which we will go live most probably the last quarter of this year, wherein we have an aspiration to bring MSME financing without any physical touch. We have now the ability of looking at multiple sets of data through which we can originate customer digitally, underwrite digitally, disburse digitally, and collect digitally. But given the volatility in the market through pandemic, we have delayed our launch for our digital channel. In terms of the liability management, I talked about three-pronged strategy of liability: balance sheet, co-origination, assignment. Today, if you look at in last 1 year, we have expanded our universe of lender. Almost the entire lending fraternity, most of the public sector bank, private sector bank, SFBs, and others have come on our balance sheet. We are now working towards bringing DFIs to our balance sheet. Our cost of borrowing has been sequentially going down, but depending upon the size of the leverage which is required, our cost of borrowing keep hovering around. But I think so for a relatively younger company, market, and especially the liability side universe has recognized the potential of this platform. And that's why we are sitting on significant amount of liquidity on the balance sheet. But more importantly, as I said, that lending in India, especially for NBFC, would become asset light if lenders continue to focus on being originator of assets rather than the owner of the asset. And that's why after almost 1 year of work with Bank of Baroda, we have gone live. We are now disbursing loans, and those loans are getting co-lended by Bank of Baroda. And hopefully we will soon go live with State Bank of India as well. If that happens, actually your ability to generate fee-based income accelerate multi-fold, and obviously your liability side pressure is also not there. So most NBFC like ours would be looked more on as a fee platform than just an interest arbitrage platform. In terms of the financial metrics, broadly it's given. Most of it's here. I think so. Gradually, our portfolio yields is gradually going up. Our cost of debt is going little down. We are very well funded by equity, so our NIM is currently high. Our OPEX to income ratio, given its build-out phase, it still continues to be little high. But I think so by end of the year, I think so our OPEX leverage would start kicking in. We have been able to maintain the quality of the portfolio through the pandemic, and it's showing very strong result. It is also a function of philosophically of keeping a very high proportion of our portfolio at secured, with not getting trapped for a very higher yield portfolio to begin with. And we have made sure that in the entire build-out period, we have always remained profitable, and we would want to now gradually increase and focus on both ROAs and ROAs. I will stop here because most of the other things is matter of detail, but we will be happy to answer through Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, thanks a lot, Snath. We'll go ahead with the question answer. Nirav, you want to add something on this, or we can straight away go into question and answer now?
We can straight away go to question and answer. There are few questions asked on the chat box, and I think we can take those first. So the question is, does all co-lending partnership comes under Pratham only? So the answer is that with Bank of Baroda, the tie-up is for a Pratham product. For the Sanjeevani, Sathi, etc., we will have tie-up with different public sector banks. Yeah, so for Pratham is only for Bank of Baroda.
Sorry, just to add what Nirav said, that we are not building an auction platform or a marketplace. We have to understand that every bank, when they partner with an NBFC, originally in the first version of co-lending, banks wanted their credit screen to be used by NBFC, and that's why it didn't work out. But now banks are, especially large banks, are adopting our credit model to go into their system. But that's why you would like, our strategy is to dedicate a particular product with a particular lender. And once our scale becomes so large that one particular bank cannot absorb everything of one product, then we add one more lender to a particular product. But that's what we are focused on right now.
Yeah. I guess Mr. Tulsiram wants to ask a question. So Tulsiram, you can unmute yourself and ask a question, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Sir, for my first question is based on your slide 23 and slide 12, where you talked about the multiple distribution lines and multiple product. So this is a very good strategy. But my question is, at the balance sheet size at which we are, what is the thinking process behind starting with so many multiple products and multiple distribution lines? Because if you see slide 23, we ourselves are saying that there are almost 10 to 15 companies which are doing the same thing which we are doing. So we are doing as good as 15 companies at a time. So isn't the execution challenge become very too much for us to handle? So that's the first question.
Can I answer this first?
Yeah.
Yes, Sachin, you can.
Okay. So, Anilji, this is the way you should think about that. All the companies which are listed, the core difference is that, most of them have yet not reached, except two of them, the size of equity capital with which we started our business. Obviously, that gives you the strength to build, because as we said, that we want to serve because there is no single institution in India which has created a large impact to SME financing. So that's a matter of aspiration, and we want to do that. And that's why we started with a large capital base. Second, in terms of the execution challenge, now we have proven that all of our lines are getting stabilized. We have management team depth which can do that. And as you rightly said, that we have the way we have built is by vertical. So our machinery financing business is similar to what an Electronica or a Siemens is, and all characteristic of that. And we are improvising on that by using our data analytics and technology. Our micro vertical, is similar to what many other such unlisted NBFCs are in that space. Our prime is similar to what most of the mainline lenders would be. Our supply chain is similar to most of the supply chain financing platform, and digital would be similar to digital lending. So the way also you should look at from this perspective, we have created this vertical to service the need of MSMEs in India. MSMEs have their need coming from different segment of the market. So we look at customer first approach. We should be able to serve a customer for its working capital requirement in supply chain. We should be able to serve a customer for its machinery. We should be able to provide a term loan through a secured lending, so on and so forth. So we want to serve the need of customer. And as you rightly said, in few quarters, I think so you will not have this question about our ability of the execution challenge, because we are now, all our channels are ramping up and we have no trouble at all.
Sachin, just to, if I were to look at lending, and when you say diversification in the lending space, we look at diversification from the perspective of the customer that we are serving. So, for example, if it would be right if we are doing two-wheeler loan or a gold loan plus an MSME loan or plus some kind of another microfinance loan, then we can call it that yes, we are doing too many things simultaneously. Here, what we are trying to say is there are various products within the MSME lending space, right? So we are always keeping the customer, which is the MSME, at the core of our lending philosophy. And within that, whatever circles around what a MSME needs is what we are serving it through the various product requirements. It's not a diversification, but it is just serving the needs of the MSME is what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And second and the last question is on the restructure asset. So on one slide, industry-wise restructuring we have given. So what I would like to understand more is, out of this 7.5 restructured asset, how much have not made any payment till date? And I think you have said 67% are current. So can you give more details on this restructured assets? What is the moratorium you have given? Is it only principal payment, interest payment? So can you give more details on the restructured assets?
Anuj, do you want to take it quickly?
Yeah. So this restructuring has happened under the restructuring guidelines of RBI. There are two kinds of notification, one for MSMEs and other for small businesses. And most of the restructuring has happened post-pandemic one. And the kind of restructuring which we have done is a combination of principal moratorium, interest moratorium, or in cases principal plus interest moratorium, ranging from 3 months to up to 2 years, which was allowed. So if we have to divide the restructured portfolio by tenures, I would say approximately 50% of the portfolio would be less than 1 year, and other would be more than 1 year tenure from restructuring tenure perspective.
Yeah, sorry, continue, sir.
No, sir, please go ahead.
No, so how many have not made even a single payment till date in the restructured asset? Any details on that?
No, so there are hardly any people who have not made any payment under restructured. This is a very, very recent thing, and it still continues. The restructuring window actually through RBI is open till September. But we haven't encountered anyone who was restructured and post-restructuring has not paid.
I have an interesting question from Venkat, saying that while the companies are technology intensive, why we are not seeing CTO in your leadership here? Is there an overlap with anybody in the IT?
Venkat, the leadership team event, so LT.
Okay. Leadership team.
Yeah. Leadership team. Yeah. So, Venkat, is an interesting question. So I think so this the core differentiate. So we have a very strong chief technology officer in company, Rishabh. Rishabh has been an ex-co-founder of
GramCover.
And before that, he was head of development for Biz2Credit, which is a very large US, tech-driven SME financing platform. It is matter of orientation. Most of the young startup want to, take technology as the lead, and they forget that this is a balance sheet-led business, wherein your protection of principal and earning of the interest is the core to the business, and technology is a facilitator to that. So our CTO directly reports into me. We work very, very closely. We are doing everything, but we would like people to recognize us for the, credit quality, balance sheet expansion, and ROEs we make over a period of time. And technology is leading to a lower OpEx and efficiency for the customer. But it's a good thing. I think so at some point in time, we will showcase our CTO as well.
So Sachin, there are various other questions also on the chat box.
Yeah.
Actually, so what we can do is we can finish the Q&A round here and then go to the chat box questions as well.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that would be better. Rishikesh from Rubo Capital. You want to go ahead?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so my first question is, sir, what disbursement numbers are we looking at going ahead in future quarters?
Okay, so
So Rishikesh, we are not actually publishing the futuristic number in the presentation, and hence to that extent will be very limited to. But what we can, as a commentary, give is the how historically on a month-on-month we have performed, and our expansion of the various distribution platform that is taking shape. What we can only say is that all of those which were affected during COVID period are coming back on track. And if all engines has to work on full capacity, then it will be much multifold X from here. But I don't think we will be able to give any comment.
Add one directional response to this. In our first year of operation, we did almost 850 crore of disbursement when we operated for 11.5 months. In our second year of operation, where we were operational only for 5 months, we did 700 crore of disbursement. So if you multiply for full year, it was 1500 odd crore. So we virtually doubled our AUM from first year to second year. That would give you an indication that when market went up, and in the interim, our 3 new engine of distribution got built during pandemic. Our Grow Micro vertical, our partnership and alliances vertical. So that would give you a sense that what would be our end AUM by end of this year.
Also, just to add that our login to disbursement was much lower during the pandemic period because we had tightened credit considering some of the sectors and subsectors that we operate in. If we were to kind of only convert those logins into some of a better kind of a disbursement percentage, I think that itself will serve the purpose for us.
Okay, sir. So what was your July disbursement for the particular month, July?
Yeah, it's in the presentation. It was
250 plus crore.
250 plus 260 crores.
Okay, great. And my second question is, sir, how many branches we added in FY21 and what is our plan for FY22?
It's a public data we have published so that we can talk about it. So we added Q3 FY21, we added 25 micro location. And this year we'll add 50 micro location.
Okay, great. And how much is of our book is PSL compliant?
95% plus.
Okay. And also, sir, my question is next that focused, and whereas we may have exposure to, several, how will these be managed? And whereas you have exposures to, several other sectors, what you say, 8 other sectors. Okay, so how?
Okay, I understand the question. So I look at this. So you have NBFCs like India School Finance Company, Varthana, which are into, say, K-12 financing. You have Kinara and a few others which are in machine tool financing. And you have geographical focus NBFC, which don't look at sectors. Majority of the large scale players don't look at sectors. They are sector neutral. They lend to everybody because they're more collateral focused. So from that perspective, we are actually focused. So it's the way you look at it. But that benefits us because during the pandemic period, what we realized that our ability to, decipher. So look at hospitality. Our ability to look at hospitality and look at a banquet hall differently than a fast food chain is what benefited us in terms of how we expand the credit. The entire sector analysis is what we call knowledge, and we centralize that pool, and through technology we disseminate at the ground. So I think that's a plus benefit to us.
Okay, and my last question is, sir, a few months ago you had reshuffled your team, and also there was a resignation of CEO. So can you please comment on that?
So Ublu's management team, the first round of management team is coming to a level of maturity. So we are 3 year plus old. Our business model is also pivoted from where we have started. Some of those people who had joined us in the first phase They want, actually, a lot of people are benefiting from Ugro's brand creation, and they are getting bigger and better opportunity from their personal perspective within the large framework banks and others. So it is a combination of some realignment of the management team, which fits to our long-term goal, and few individual choices of people who want to take different roles. So there's nothing, I think so. What is good about Ugro is that the kind of and size of the talent which we are attracting now is of a very, very different quality. And we are actually, a lot of new people want to come and work for us. So which is a very good thing. I've seen in my journey of 35 years, 30 plus years of financial services experience, every financial institution take around 5 years to settle for a more stable team. Look at the HDFCs and ICCs of the world. I think our first round of that transition, and certain set of people came in, set the business, brought it to a level, and now it's a second generation of team coming in and now growing the business. So nothing odd about it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Rishikesh. Mr. Maheshwari, you want to go ahead with your question?
Yes, hi. Hi, this is Anuj here. Thanks for organizing this call. It's really helpful. I have just one quick question on, like you mentioned about this MSME. I mean, you're focusing on MSME lending, which is a big opportunity. And obviously, the AUM target which you have set, we see a lot of growth opportunities over there. Can you highlight the risk which the company faces, the key risk, as you set on this growth path? What would be the key risk as an investor that we should be looking at? That is my first question.
Yeah, it's actually, I should not be doing that. But actually, if you look at our size of the capital, the portfolio quality, the expansion, and where we are in vis-a-vis any comparable in the market, you have to make your own assessment, but I can't understand, what risk could be. Obviously, for every company, there are one macro, and second is the, macro risk. Our macro risk, obviously, one is MSME as a business. They are more volatile than some other segments, self-employed, salaried. MSME are a business cycle businesses. So if you continue to believe that come what may, India would be sub 5% growth rate, then obviously the entire MSME would get affected. But if you believe that whatever is the governance, whosoever is the governance, whatever is the policy, India would continue to grow at least at a rate of 6 to 7%. MSMEs would continue to flourish. And I'm not taking pandemic kind of impact. Hopefully that would be over. That's one. Second, one of the biggest challenge and the risk for the growth of NBFCs or any fintech lending platform has been the liability side spectrum, because the source of the liability was not permanent. And post IL&FS that became very troublesome. I think so. We are gradually cracking the code on the liability side. The combination of the diversified liability provider along with our co-lending and DFI partners, actually where we sit today, we are very comfortably can say that is not, it is always a challenge, but that's not going to be a hurdle to our growth. Now, after that, our strategy for 5 years is very clear. It's all about, sheer execution, maintaining faith in ourselves and continue to grow. Amit, you want to add something on the liability side, which otherwise is generally seen as a big challenge for lending institutions?
Yeah. So Mr. Nath has actually touched about the bilateral lending aspect. I think banking liquidity continues to be very, very high. So as we speak, average banking liquidity in the system is almost 6 lakh crores in last, if I actually look at the average for last week or so. So on the banking side, these banks also are facing issues to deploy their liquidity in credible borrowers. So obviously, given where we are in terms of our capital structure, in terms of our leverage ratios and all that, we actually present a very attractive option for that deployment. Having said that, we obviously on the bilateral lending side, that is something which is sorted out, I think. Even on the capital market side also, things are opening up a lot. You had actually seen post IL&FS crisis, NBFCs were actually being seen negatively. But now things are opening up again. And there are new instruments which have actually come up in the market. So you have seen the covered bonds in the form of market-linked debentures. They have become very, very popular. In fact, we have actually seen a lot of success in that particular market. So while liability is something which is a very, very important part of our business because it's a raw material, we don't really see any challenge. So on both on the capital market side and on the bilateral lending side, we are at a very, very strong wicket, and we think our growth won't be hampered because of the want of liability.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. My second question was on this fee income. So how much is the fee income in proportion to this total revenue?
Right now, it is not. Most of our income is balance sheet led income, except some of the insurance cross-sell.
Okay. And one final question. It's just in continuation of the previously asked question on the CEO resignation. So are we looking to hire a new CEO? Any strategy on that?
No, right now I've said this in our previous quarter results as well that, we have a 3-layered organization. So I, as a founder, executive chairman and managing director, I'm 100% involved with the business and dedicated. We had CEO who was running the business on a day-to-day basis. And we have a strong second layer of the management team. Right now, what the board has decided that given the strong management team which we have below me, for a foreseeable future, we don't need a CEO in the company. As a managing director, I'm driving the business both strategically and a little bit operationally. But there is no intention right now for at least current financial year to hire any CEO.
Okay. Thanks. Those were my questions, and all the best.
Jignesh, there are actually a lot of questions lined up on the chat box. I think we can take those as well. Some of them are very interesting as well, and most of the people would need an answer for that. So on
just there one second. Anuj Maheshwari, who raised a question, can you just specify your company name, please? If that is okay with you.
Yeah, I'm an individual investor.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, Nilo, please go.
So one of the questions Sachin has been asked on the chat box is Mr. MD mentioned in one of his interviews that we are going to exhaust the 1,000 crore BOB co-origination loan in this financial year itself. Are you on track to achieve this?
I don't know where I did mention that. And I'm definitely hoping, given this, what I talked about, the size of the asset which is getting created in our book, hopefully a large portion of that we would like to exhaust in the current financial year.
Jignesh, you want to take the rest of the question on the chat box, or you want to kind of go and ask? First, I guess Mr. Anil Kumar is already holding up. So you have a question?
One last question. See, on the slides where you have given the sector-wise restructured assets, I think for onward lending, it is around 25% restructuring. So my question is, has anything, is it very micro loans because of which the restructuring is high? And the related question is, can you explain more about your co-lending with the NBFCs? What is the vision and what is that we wanted to achieve through it? Not in terms of numbers, but more qualitative, what exactly we are trying to do with this co-lending with the NBFCs? Yeah, and thank you.
So I'll take the second one first. I'll come to the... So I think so in the terms of the co-lending, it is not just with NBFCs. As we said that given our size of capital, access to size of equity capital, access to the cost of capital, and our ability to evaluate a partner who has access to customer. That access to customer can be in multifold. It can be a small NBFC which has a ground presence of reaching out to customer, originate a loan, disburse a loan, and service the loan. It can be a payment platform which have a history of transaction data. It can be a marketplace which has a history of, again, a transaction data which is more merchandise related. Or it can be, multiple other formats which are coming into the marketplace. So it's a combination of our, deep data analytical capability, our ability to assess the underlying transaction flow, evaluate the underlying philosophy of underwriting of a partner, and basis that come to a, loss ratio scenario and ask for some form of a credit cover. And then at every customer level, provide our balance sheet along with the partner. That's the philosophy. In terms of the benefit, I think so it helps us to scale. And more than it helps us to scale, it is actually maturing our data sciences exponentially, because we are being able to gather customer information at much faster pace than what we would do purely on our own organic build. Because if more you originate the loan, more mature is your data science and your ability to underwrite. Hope this answers the first question. The second question, on the first one, on the restructuring on the onward lending side, actually, it's only one small NBFC case, or it's just up 3.5 crore. Unfortunately, the restructuring guidelines does not cover and restructuring for an NBFC loan, and that's why that whole transaction has gone, and it shows a high percentage, but it's just one case. And the underlying NBFC had some mismatch of cash flow, but otherwise fine.
Yeah, thank you. That's it. No more questions.
Jignesh, should we take the questions from the chat now?
I'm just going ahead. So Jay, who is an individual investor, he is asking that the ECL data shows that stage 1 is 92 to 93% of the total loans. Does this mean that these are all zero DPD customers?
Anuj?
Yeah.
Yes, these are all zero DPD customers.
Zero DPD, right? Second, promoter's stake is 2.7% and management ESOPs is more than 5%, looks to be lower, and suggests less than 5% looks to be lower, and suggests that the skin in the game could be on the lower side. Your comments, if any?
Sir, it is it is this way. Skin in the game is depending upon how big your skin is, right? So that's the way it's skin in the game. But in a lending balance sheet business, when a professional who is turning to an entrepreneur and who has deployed more than 150% or 200% of his personal net worth into the company, and straight away on basis of that raises 1,000 crore of capital, you would get diluted down. It's a choice which we made. We could have only raised 100 crore and taken 7 years to reach where we are. And probably my personal stake would have been now gone up from 2.7% to say 20 odd %. Eventually, in a lending institutional run by professionals, the founding team always get diluted down. I have taken the personal call or choice to make business more resilient and get diluted early on. And I don't see any problem. If you look at the largest institution today, HDFC, both HDFC Limited, HDFC Bank, there is the management teams are only incentivized by ESOPs, and there is enough skin in the game, and they have multi-year value creation they have done for investors. That's the answer for that, and I think so. Our view is that actually, if you have a combination of very high quality governance, a very strong in shareholders' influence, and an aligned management team, that is a far better model than one single individual promoter who has a very serious conflicting interest. It is not just a matter of money. Our reputation, our life is at stake in this business. So don't judge us by percentage of shareholding, I would say. Judge us by what we are investing, both in terms of our capital, time, energy, and what we want to create in this country.
Very nicely articulated, sir. And Amit Agarwal is asking if we are planning any rights issue.
I think third part of the same question is pending. So since the time the new management team has taken control, there have multiple changes, challenges, structural changes. You may have also made some mistakes or headwinds. Can you elaborate some of the mistakes and learnings out of those?
Most of that we've answered. I think the one thing which we definitely would like to tell, that when we started in 2018, so when we conceptualized this business, that was pre-ILFS. Since then, the liability side spectrum and the fundamental architecture of the business has dramatically changed. We would have liked that on 1,000 crore of capital raised, we would have been rated AA minus. Our cost of capital should be sub 9%, and we would have expanded more prime business. But we did that pivot because we understood that we would be doing justice by serving much broader market, micro market, cash flow based financing. And we transitioned business very quickly to a broad-based distribution architecture and a broad-based liability architecture. And that has been our learning, and now we are fully well stable on that.
Yeah, and I think just to add here, it's not since the time the new management has taken over, the management has remained the same. And since the time we have started, we have seen multiple challenges, and I would say it's not challenges with respect to internal problems or issues. It is with respect to the macro. So whatever had to go wrong within last 3 years have gone wrong, right from very recent COVID to prior to that ILFS, Yes Bank, India Bulls, all of those things we have. So what we have been able to build even during the toughest time is a very resilient portfolio, and that's the key takeaway, and that's the learning as well from the challenges that we faced. So
I that's one thing on that. I think so where our opportunity set lies, that majority of the peer set lending institutions who have already built-in portfolio are today facing both trouble managing those portfolio and underlying matching the cash flow, liability side challenge, and so on and so forth. So to that extent, our timing has been great for us. We don't have that problem. All of our focus is growth versus all of our peer set focus is managing existing business.
Yeah, and as earlier has been asked, any plans for the rights issue right now?
No, sir.
No plans?
No, this is a similar question on QIP. I think so. Yeah. Every year we do an enabling resolution. As you know, QIP resolution expires every 12 months. It's just an reissue of that resolution. But as of today, it's a company which is very well capitalized. Its leverage ratio is very low. Given that co-lending is coming in force, actually, our leverage would continue to remain low. So there is no plan for any capital raise right now.
Harita is from Arya Securities is asking if how our collection efficiency during COVID wave 2 and how we are seeing a trend now in July and August post Q1 FY22. Any comments on the collection efficiency side?
So our collection efficiencies during the pandemic 2 wave in April and May had dipped a little to around 86 to 90%. But we have seen a sharp increase in June and July, and now we are hovering around 93, 94%. Bounce rate also have come down. So overall, the macroeconomic environment is getting better.
Okay. The second question from Harita is that our interest yield has increased to 15.8 in Q1 FY22 compared to 14.1 last year, same period. If you can point a major driver for the improvement in yields?
I think this is a little construct of the portfolio, the way it got built. Quite a bit of our portfolio or a portion of portfolio has come from our partnership and alliances. Given the nature of micro MSME which is being served, the portfolio being higher. And we intend to remain in the same range over a period of time.
And third question from Arita had been that our AUM stands at around 1,500 crores as of July. And we have been talking about AUM of roughly around 20,000 crores by FY25. So some light on the overall strategy, how we are trying to achieve this now. So I
will answer it again, ma'am. That we did 850 crore in year one. We did roughly same AUM when we are operating only 5 to 6 months. So we doubled our AUM. And if you keep doubling our AUM every year, you'll reach that number. So we have the infrastructure, the distribution, the liability, all of that is in place. You have to just keep executing on that.
There is a question from Anuj Maheshwari. Are we looking to reduce our cost of borrowings, and which seems a little high as of now?
So I can take this question. So I don't think our cost of borrowing is actually high, given the nature of business and where we are rated. Obviously, cost of borrowing is dependent on the stage of the business cycle in which a company is operating, and also on the rating. So there is always a constant endeavor to basically see ways and means of reducing the cost of borrowing, which has been coming down every quarter. If you look quarter on quarter, you would actually see a secular declining trend. But obviously, this is dependent on, as I said, the business, the cycle of the business in which company is operating, and also on the rating. So we are obviously talking to rating agency for a rating upgrade, which would also help in reduction and different kind of instruments. So this is a constant endeavor.
I would just add, please, sir, don't compare us with what we call the AAA large promoter-backed companies in India. unfortunately, India's liability market and rating market judge and evaluate lending institution not because of their underlying business performance, but largely who the shareholder is. While the test of the time have been that none of those shareholders have actually been able to provide requisite support when it was actually required, but that's the construct of the market. So the cost of liability of those AAAs and AA plus, or the companies which are more than 10, 15 year plus vintage versus our peer set are in our peer set, with our vintage, actually our cost of borrowing is 250 basis point down than any comparable which you can think of.
Understood. Mr. Vijay Chauhan, who is from Right Horizon, is asking any expected timeline for touching the double-digit ROE?
So we've given our 5-year target publicly. Our 5-year target, if you look at the last slide of our investor presentation, which always goes out, we have said that we will touch an ROE of 18.8%. That is our target for 2025. Probably this might get little accelerated if our co-lending actually really become more successful than what we are talking today. As I said, that today our target is 30% of our AUM to go in co-lending. But if you keep improving that trigger and you take it to 50 odd %, your ROE creation would be much faster because that's an asset light business, or sorry, balance sheet light or capital light business.
I think one of the questions is actually from Akshay. How big is our tech and data science team? Every tech company has indicated a rise in compensation for their employees. Do we see similar trend? So Anuj, you may want to talk about how large is the data science team that we have at this point in time. On the tech side, we have about 20 plus members on the technology side. And Anuj actually spearheads the data science team.
So from design perspective, when we design, the idea was to have very high caliber people who will design the whole data science architecture, and the execution mostly so far we have been outsourcing. But when now we have developed, especially GrowthScore 1 and GrowthScore 2, which is quite proprietary in nature, so some of the execution also we are doing in-house. So currently the team size is a little more than 10. But the idea is to keep expanding as we expand. But from intellectual caliber perspective, as a culture, we don't want to compromise at all, and we want to spearhead the thought process in fintech lending.
I may like to answer this question a little bit one other way. Of our total people OPEX, our centralized cost consists of roughly around 40 odd %, and of that around 20 odd %, 25% is our data sciences team's cost. So we have invested disproportionately, very heavily in very, very senior caliber, and we are adding to that. With respect to our technology team, we build our first prototypes by using multiple vendors for different kind of product. There is roughly around 30 people dedicated team which sits outside our payrolls. And now with our new CTO, we are making it largely in-house. Gradually, we are, because of the, as Anu said, proprietary nature of both our data sciences and tech, we are making it in-house, and very soon it should become a large team. But we are, as we said, that we don't want to fashion ourselves saying that because we have 200 people in technology, that's why we are a great company. We want to deliver superior returns financially, and technology and data sciences will underpin that. But we are constantly investing. In terms of the cost going up, that's true. I think so. That is going up, but I think so we still attract a lot of people because the level of innovation which people can experience within YouGrow is far superior than many other traditional companies or some other players.
Yeah, there is, I guess, now discusses a question from Mr. Venkat, who is from 3 Sigma Financials, that while the company is technology intensive, why are we not seeing a CTO?
I've answered that.
Already done. So I guess the last question is, we can take it up from Mr. Anil Kumar Tulsinam, who has raised a question, who has raised a hand. Mr. Tulsinam, you want?
Thanks. Thanks for giving opportunity for the third time. My question is on the co-lending. So first, it's quite commendable that we could get the co-lending agreement with the Bank of Baroda. So what has helped us in getting this agreement, though we are only 3 years old? And the same question on SBI and ICICI. I think it's almost 18 months. So what is causing the delay with these two institutions in getting the agreement signed? It is because we don't have a long track record, or is it the COVID or anything else? And if you can give more
I'll just give you
on the co-lending side.
Yeah. Different question. So Anilji, I think so. Agreements are signed with all three. As I said, there are two framework of co-lending by RBI has come in India. First framework was given by RBI, which was called co-origination arrangement, which came in 2018. And within the first year itself, three of the large lending institutions signed up and signed agreement. When large banks like in SBI and Bank of Baroda sign an agreement, then they complete all the diligence process, technology integration process, standard operating procedure. But the challenge in the first circular was that the way the circular was designed in the first regime, it was very challenging to start co-lending. All banks and all large or mid-sized NBFC went back to RBI, and RBI revised their framework in November of 20. And under the revised framework, the new structure of co-lending has emerged. And under the new structure, we have now re-signed our agreement with Bank of Baroda, done all the tech integration, process integration, and gone live, and loans are now getting disbursed. And under the second revised same framework, we are going live with SBI soon. Hopefully, they are working on their processes. We will sign soon. Reason why we publicly publish their name, because we already have signed agreement with them.
Yeah. So just one last question on the co-lending itself. So how logistically it works? Means, do you have to physically send the file to the company, or once you approve the loan, you have a tech integration with the Bank of Baroda and they also review? So how exactly it works on? Because you will have multiple co-lending partners and multiple products. So if you can explain a little bit on that side.
So sir, we have a platform called Grow Extreme. Our Grow Extreme platform is the platform for our entire co-lending. So all the partnership and alliances which we do on the asset side, and all the partnership which we are doing on the liability side, goes through our platform, which is an API box, under which anyone who is originating loan with us, or when we originate loan with the bank, is all driven through that tech platform. I think that's quite proprietary. That is our secret sauce why vis-a-vis many of the large lending institutions in India, we have been as the first preferred partner for two of the largest banks in the country. So I would just limit my response to that we have a proprietary tech-enabled platform which helps facilitating this process.
No problem, sir. And thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for answering so many questions in so detailed form, and excellent disclosures, and all the best to you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just quickly, Kunal, who is an individual investor, is asking what is the total percentage of total book originated from the DSA channel? That is the first question that he has it.
Sir, I don't think we do that disclosure, but I think the way you should think about it, that our branch-led channel, our prime branches are all supported by our Grow partners, which can be a DSA or a referral. We have 770 plus intermediary or Grow partners, of which roughly around 40% are active with us. A large portion of our current origination is from our prime branches, and rest of our channels are now growing. That might give you some sense of how our origination is happening.
Because he has a related question on DSA only. He's saying that any rationale for originating from DSA given the low margins, and given the SO-led branch channels has low productivity compared to telecallers on the digital channel and in the industry, why not focus on the digital channel as well?
Oh, sure. So as I said, that if you look at the construct of our 4 distribution channel, our branch-led channel, our prime branches are supported by intermediary partners because that's a prime customer. Most of the prime customers have some or other relationship with a loan originator, and that's why loan get facilitated faster. Second, our micro channel is all direct, because all of our locations have salespeople who are supported by our central, digital marketing team, and they will go and originate. Our entire ecosystem is direct. Our machinery business is through our OEM partners. On the question of digital and why we are not doing digital, because we are overweighted on secured side of asset. In digital, if you are doing PL consumer, then you can actually do a large portion of business digitally. When you do secured loans, then you can only do lead generation through digital channel, but you still need some form of a physical touch to do customer onboarding. And that's why, and we are not increasing our buffer of unsecured financing right now, given the where we are as a maturity of the organization. Once we start growing that, then we will also accelerate our digital channel.
Yeah, Mr. Krishnan PS, I guess this has already been answered by Mr. Pandey, but still, he's asking, are you comfortable with the bounce rates ranging between 11.3 to 24.3 for June 21? What are the bounce rates in July? And can you provide more details on the loan repayment status for July 21 for the loans that had higher bounce rates in June 21, as well as on the ECL stage 2 and 3 during June 21, which is roughly around 102 crores.
Broadly, I had answered. We have seen improvement in collection efficiencies and lowering of bounce rates. So a higher bounce rate in absolute term is a concern, but not heavily so, because as far if collection efficiencies are high, and if you see the collection efficiencies are improving a lot, so there might be delayed payment, but not defaults. So at this point of time, we are not overly concerned. This is the first July was the first full month after pandemic. And our own assessment is that August, September will be much better.
And second question from Mr. Krishnan, who is an individual investor, had been that our USP has been mentioned as a digital underwriting, combining technology, analytics, and our understanding of the sector business. So ultimately, it is aggregation of multiple variables. The business banking division of major banks would have already cracked it. There can't be such a huge difference in approval timelines too. And banks' cost of funds are anyhow lower compared to us. So some of them are starting to become aggressive as well on the unsecured portfolio too. They have an edge in the market. Can you please explain how our underwriting is distinct from banks? And this is not a criticism, but a genuine effort to understand our model that differentiates us from banks and provide us the edge.
Broadly, this is the automated basket section.
Okay. I will try.
So this is being moved to this side. This toggle is being like fixed a little bit to make it clearer to read and all of that stuff. And there is, some amount of changes happening in terms of what we show as people start building their baskets on the left and so on. So all these things are being worked on right now. And so this is the basic design, right? And so I wanted to have the product in such a way that since there is a lot of FAQs and all of that stuff that needs to be built, that site is working on with Vivek. You can sort of anchor those sections of the start folio, and I was hoping that you can anchor some of this automated basket creation bit, right? In terms of designing a pre-built basket, you already created some screeners, right? And we need some process thinking in terms of how will the screener creation mechanism on Trendline link to the automated basket mechanism, right? So we can basically start creating frameworks around how this section should look like once a basket creation is done. And I would suggest that if you have time, join the design alchemy design call regarding this that is happening on Thursday.
The size of the credit expansion, what is needed in India, has to be 10
Sorry, not Thursday. Yeah, Thursday call already got done in the morning. So Tuesday call in the evening.
It can be banks.
Where Aman will show the final designs around this piece.
You can have another 100
so you get a sense of how this flow works, since he'll be showing the flow. And how people are selecting these different parameters and so on.
Now, in terms of the
right, and after that, if you have any questions, we can sync up and just you can understand how this thing works. But I think you have access to Zeppelin already. So take a look at this piece. It's fairly straightforward. The idea is that you want to essentially allow people to create these automated baskets based on their sense of their risk profile, how much growth they want, and how much valuation they're comfortable with, as well as the amount of money they want to invest, the diversification of their portfolio, and the time period they want to invest in, right? And under the hood, basically what we're doing is we're running queries with change, with interest rate score inbuilt, with durability score inbuilt, with things like growth parameters, momentum parameters, and stuff like that included based on what they're selecting here. But they don't see any of that unless they click show query, which we've asked someone to add in the final screen.
So that is what our differentiation is.
And so that will go somewhere around here at the bottom. You asked him to arrange this over here so that people can see the under the hood query if they click a drop down.
Second to none.
Okay.
So
that's
basically,
a screener
there must be some reason for that.
Yeah, that will be a screener query. But as you can see, what we're showing them is basically like 6 or 7 things that they can
banking,
set
small finance banking
based on
something
which
you
the
could apply
basket will
for
be
in future.
created, right? So for them,
what we are doing right now,
just ask
the energy to
what do you mean?
think of anything else.
I mean, there's a clear
great. I think this is it. You already passed time.
And then
what we
next to that, there's a
these are steps to create the basket.
Let's end the call here.
So basically,
thank you very much.
So basically, whenever the person clicks next over here,
this opportunity.
It's the final screen.
And thanks to Nirav and the entire team who will be present. If we have any further questions,
so this is design, so he's
either you can write it to us or directly to Nirav as well. And
the transition is basically multiple steps in which they are helping you to create a basket.
Last remarks.
So this is the start page, right? Make your own algorithmic baskets in 5 steps. And then people start selecting investment amount here.
As we said, we are
in a number of stock here.
From a listed company format.
Then the time they want to invest over here. And once selected these 3 things, right?
In the market for
then
10, 15, 20 years.
They will be.
But at the base where we started,
this is showing the transition, how people move this. Then rebalancing frequency. There will be a pre-selected creamer over here, right? But they can change the rebalancing frequency if they want. And then they will be asked to choose their risk, growth, and value comfort using this thing. This will be sort of to this has already done.
Thank you, sir,
so
and
that
all
the
the best
person
for the coming quarters and all.
So this was the first iteration.
Thank you very much.
But basically, you're choosing
Thanks, everybody.
like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parameters for the basket.
Right.
Based on which the basket will be created. I was recording a Zoom call. Just 1 second.
Okay, sure.